This week is Pasha Shemois, defined by the Ramban. Chumash Shemois is defined by the Ramban. Sefer HaGolus v'HaGeulo. And we start learning about Golus Mitzrayim and about redemption, Geulas Mitzrayim. In the first Pasha, we learn about the Gezeros, the terrible decrees. V'yomer melech Mitzrayim lemiyaldes u'ivrios, asher shemo achas shifro v'shema achas puo. V'yomer bi'ale etchen es u'ivrios u'reisem alo avnayim, im beinhu v'hamite noisoi, v'im basi v'choyo. You should destroy the baby boys, and only the baby girls let live. Who were these mialdois u'ivrios? Rashi, first and foremost, Rosh v'rishon le'Rabbeinu harishonim. Rashi says that we Yocheved and Miriam, noshim tzidkonios, b'mesiras nefesh, they defied Paro's decree, and they let all the children live. Moshev Zekenim HaTorah is a compilation of Balei HaTosfos, and we find one shitta in that sefer, Moshev Zekenim HaBalei HaTosfos, that those midwives were non-Jewish, they were Gentiles, they were Egyptian midwives. Mialdos U'ivrios means Mialdos Shel U'ivrios, but they were not Jewish. The Marshon Sanhedrin Nun Zayin argues that Paro intentionally demanded from Jewish midwives to destroy the children because Akum neherogim ala ubarim. That is a Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Nun Tes. Gentiles are chayiv misa for destroying a fetus, a ubar. And for some reason, in some way, Paro was aware of this halacha, and therefore he couldn't demand from the non-Jewish midwives to kill children, and that is why he imposed it on the Jews. Well, this pshat assumes that Paro was aware of the Gemara Sanhedrin Nun Tes, and I wonder, obviously, maybe he learned Gemara, but he didn't learn Tosfos, because Tosfos on the spot in Sanhedrin Nun Tes, and once again in Chulin Amid Gimel, Tosfos says, Akum neherogin ala ubrin. But Jewish people aren't chayev mises based in, but it is an isur dioraisa. So maybe Paro did learn the Tosfos, but he argued it's an isur dioraisa, but it might not be a hereg v'alyava. And if I threaten those midwives, if they will defy my decree and they wouldn't do as I say, then I will kill them. So maybe it's not yehereg v'alyava. So this mashah, understandably, is pilpul. And if it's pilpul, let's go all the way in pilpul. So in Minchas Osha and Pasha Shemois, he said, there's another Rambam, Hilchos Ritzeach, the Rambam writes that non-Jews are chayev misa if they kill a person with an agent. In our halacha, ain't shliach dvar avera. But by goyim, asholeach sholiach larog es nefesh chayev misa. The source of that Rambam is neither in Bavli nor in Yerushalmi, it's in Medrash Rabbah. Somewhat of a surprise that the Rambam takes halacha out of the Medrash. But the Medrash darshans, Shoifach dam ha'odam ba'odam dama yeshofach. Ha'odam ba'odam means killing one person through an agent, sending one person to kill another. That is the same pasuk from which Chazal learn in Sanhedrin Nun Tes, Goyim neherogin al ha'ubarim. Eza odam shehu betoich odam, ze ubar, shoifach dam ha'odam ba'odam. So Paro was a big lamdan. And Paro said, if I send a messenger, an agent, to kill a ubar, to kill a fetus, mimanav shach, I can't be chayiv, because either pshat in the posuk is shoifach dam ha'odam betoich odam, or shoifach dam ha'odam al yedei odam. But we can't use the same posuk to learn two different halachas. So sometimes that is the way we learn Chumash. And many times we are mefalpel. In the lumdus of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, I think it is somewhat of an exaggeration to me mefalpel in the lumdus of Parai. So Parai was aware of the Gemara Sanhedrin, of the Toises, of the Rambam in Hilchos Roitzeach. Well, every politician today has an advisor in Yonei Charedim. Every major politician in Israel has a Yoetzel in Yonei Charedim. And I think America as well, the governor has some Haredi people on his staff to know what's going on with the Jews. So maybe this was the genius of Paro's special commissioner for Haredim, for the Orthodox community. But let us deal with this fascinating sugya. Terminating a pregnancy. What is the issue of destroying a fetus? And we start off the shiur with 7 different approaches. Number 1, some gedolim feel and maintain it is a issue of retzicha, ibud nefesh. Not as harsh as killing a living person that was born v'yotza la'avir ha'olam. Rotzeach chayev mises bezdin. A fetus is not a full-fledged human being. After all, the Mishnah says in Perek Zayin of Aholos, Hamekash aleilid mechatchen es avrade vorim evorim yotzo roishai ein noigem boy. A woman's life is in jeopardy at the time of childbirth. The only way to save a life is by destroying the fetus. That is what we do. We destroy the ubar to save the mother's life. If the baby has his head out of the birth canal, this baby is a human being. His life is as precious as his mother's life. We don't destroy one life to salvage another. We leave it up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But as long as he is a fetus, a ubar, and this mission is brought in Sanhedrin Beis and Beis, and Rashi explains, ubar is not a nefesh. Afal piken, some later achroinim maintain, not a full-fledged nefesh, but it still is an isser of lo tirtzach. Tzofnis paneach, the Rogachover, Tshuvas Chelak Aleph Siman Tes. His contemporary in Dvinsk. Dvinsk wasn't a very big kehillah, but in the pre-Holocaust generation, they had 2 of the greatest gedolim. Reb Meir Simcha, the Or Sameach, and the Tzofnis paneach, Reb Yoshe Rozin, the Rogachover. And in this halacha, Shnei Nevi'im Misnabim B'signon Echad. Tzofnis paneach Chelak Aleph Siman Nun Tes. Mesha Chochma Parshas V'Yakal, and the posek. Maka Odom Yumas. Reb Meir Simcha argues, an uber is not a nefesh, but he is a Odom. He is human. He's a human being. Yumas means Misa B'dei Shemayim. Neither the Tzofnis Paneach nor the Moshe Chochma doesn't write this Svara Halacha Lemaisa. But after all, they were 2 sages, 2 of the greatest Gedolim of their Tkufa. The one that is very machmir, Halacha Lemaisa, is the Igros Moshe, Reb Moshe Feinstein. Choshe Mishpot Chelik Beis, Mesamech till Ayin Beis, several Shubas. And Reb Moshe is very machmir in terminating a pregnancy. According to the Moshe, the only justification would be when the mother's life is in jeopardy, is in danger. That is the opinion of the Igros Moshe. And he writes explicitly, it is an Isser of Ibud Nefesh. That's opinion number 1. In the time of Reb Moshe, the Tzitz Eliezer was considered the Mekel. And sometimes when there was a desperate need, I know Reb Shlomo Zalman sent people ask Reb Eliezer Yudel. He used to send them to the Tzitz Eliezer. Approach number 2 is the Mizrachi Al HaTorah Pashas Mishpotim. Once again, the Mizrachi Al HaTorah is not a halachic source, but he was one of the greatest Gedolim going back 500 years. Mizrachi Al HaTorah Pashas Mishpotim says the only reason Harigas Ubar is not chayiv mises because we don't know. Maybe it wasn't a Vlad Bar Kiyoma, maybe it was a Nefel. Maybe this fetus didn't have any chance really to be a healthy child. Today, it's not so reasonable when we have ultrasound and we know what's going on. But going back 500 years, going back 2,000 years, we would never know what the situation of what the condition of a fetus is. So that is the Mizrahi. Approach number 3 is a fascinating approach, and that is the Chavis Yor Siman Lamed Aleph, and following in the footsteps of the Chavis Yor. Reb Baruch Frankel, the Baruch Tam, Shalosh Teshuvas Ateres Chachomim, Even Ezra Siman Aleph, and Schused Avrom. Reb Avrom Al-Tshachanava was one of the Gedolim in Poland in the days of the Chidush Harim, the Divrei Chaim, going back 170 years. These 3 Gedolim maintain the Isser to destroy a fetus is the same as Hoitzoas Zera Levatola. Interesting. Hoitzoas Zera Levatola. Kal v'chomer, that you can't destroy a fetus. He is one stage closer to being a human child. Number 4, when the Gemara says, Akum neherogin ala ubarim, sanedrin nuntes, shofech dama odam ba'odam dama yeshofech. Tosfos asks a fundamental question. Miye kemide de liyasol shori, v'lagoy osur. The Gemara says, it cannot be that a goy has a prohibition and a Jew does not have that prohibition. What's osur to a goy cannot be permissible to a Jew. We have more mitzvahs than they do. They only have 7 and we have 613. We have Tariag. Miye gemide de liyasol shori v'la'akum osur. So Tosfos asks, how about destroying a fetus? Goy nereg ala ubar, and a Jew not. Twice in Shas, Tosfos says, Sanhedrin Nun Tes Omid Aleph and Chuna Lamed Gimel, Gam li Yisrael Isur Diuraisa. So the Jew doesn't bear liability in Beis Din, but it is an Isur Diuraisa. And therefore it should be no wonder that a Jew isn't Chayiv Misa and a Goy is. It's impossible that to a Jew it's permissible and to a non-Jew it's prohibited. But sometimes the punishment would be different. Noide beYehuda Madurat Inyona Choshe Mishpat Nun Tes. Shalosh Teshuvas Beis Shloima Choshe Mishpat Kuf Lamed Beis maintain that this very Savora is the reason a Jew cannot destroy a fetus, and terminating a pregnancy would be an Issur. Why? What would the Issur be? Miye kemida. So in Kovetz Shmuas from Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, Ois Chav Gimel, Rabbi Elchanan deals with the question, is Miye kemida a siman or a sibah? How do we understand this word Miye kemida when Chazal say it's impossible that something would be permissible to a Jew and prohibited to a non-Jew? Is that in itself the reason of prohibition to the Jewish person? Or it's just an argument? Look for the reason. This isn't a reason. This is just an argument. This svara just tells us it is impossible. This cannot be. But this svara isn't the rationale of the etzem isur. To me, the second approach would be the more reasonable one. So that would take us back either to the Moshe Feinstein or to the Chavis Yor, either at Zera or Loisirtzach. But some Gedolim maintain, no, this Savora is actually the fundamental Isur, the rationale of the Isur, which is mi, ike, midi. Two of the early Amudei Torah were quite lenient dealing with terminating a pregnancy. That's 2 tshuvas in Maharit and 2 tshuvas in Radbaz. Marit Tzadik Zayin and Tzadik Tes. Radbaz Chelik Beis Tofresh Tzadik Hei, Chelik Chet Simen Chav Beis. The Marit and Radbaz say, terminating a pregnancy is not lo yisirtzach. It has nothing to do with din and nefashos. So Simen Tzadik Zayin in the Marit, he says it's merely choivel b'chaveiroi. You're hurting the mother. Choyvel b'chaveiroi, lo yosef lahakoisoi. The Maritin Simen Tzadik Teta and the Radbaz and both Shuvas says that it's Dina Mominus. It's Dina Mominus because the Mevlodis belongs to the father. Definitely not Lois Sertzach. So these are 5 different approaches. Let me share with you. No, number 6 is very far-fetched. I said 7. Chuvas Maram Shik. Yoredei Kuf Nun Hey. This is totally bederach pilpul. The Maram Shik says, Chotze Shir Osam Torah. An ubar is like a Chotze Shir. He's not a human being yet. He's not a nefesh, but he is somewhat of a nefesh. After all, his heart is pumping. His organs are slowly being developed. He's a potential human being. Chotze Shir Osam Torah. Interesting. Minchas Osher Chumash Vayikro and Parshas Vayikro. There's a fascinating siman about Chotze Shir be'echus, unlike Chotze Shir be'kamus. Chotze Shir in quality, not only in quantity. Because the classical example of Chotze Shir, Machloikes Reb Yochanan v'Shlokish and Yom Ayin Dalad is Chotzi Kezayis, Chotzi Revius, Chotzi Koseves, Chotzi Gergeres. Quantity, less than the required Shiur. But I brought about 15 sources that sometimes we found a qualitative Chotze Shir. Chotze Shir in essence and not in quantity, not in kamus. One of the sources I quoted was Shuvas Maharam Shik. So after giving you 6 different approaches, I want to share with you the Minchas Osher. And this brings us to another question. Is it permissible? Is it obligatory? Are we mechuyev to be mechal Shabbos to save a fetus? The Ramban and the Ran quote Alochas Gedolos, yes. And according to them, it's a Mishnah in Masechet Yom. Ubarash shehericho. If a pregnant woman smelled food and she feels she needs to eat, and if we won't feed her, that will be Sakonas Nefoshes, Ma'achile Noisa. And there are 2 different approaches in the Rishonim. Whose life is in jeopardy? Whose life is in danger? The mother's life or the life of the fetus? Both the Ramban and Torah Sa'odam and the Ran, Dav Beis Omid Beis, Ran Masechet Yom, quote Alochas Gedolos. We're dealing with a situation in which the mother's life is not in jeopardy, but the baby might be in danger, and we eat on Yom Kippur to salvage the life of a fetus, of a ubar. Why? Ubar is not a nefesh. We destroy the fetus to save his mother. Halachas Gedolah says, Chalel olav Shabbos achas kadei sheyesh mashaboso isharba. We are machal Shabbos, and we eat in Yom Kippur for potential life. So a uber is not yet a living human being. He's not a nefesh, but he is a potential nefesh. And that is reason enough to be machal Shabbos. Do we have a mitzvah to save a uber? Of course we do. Otherwise, what would be the permit to be machal Shabbos to save an uber? I think it's totally unreasonable. It's impossible. It's ridiculous to say you could eat in Yom Kippur and you could be machal Shabbos to save something that you don't need to save. How could you be machal Shabbos to do something that you're not mechuyev to do? How could it be that 2 women are pregnant? We destroy the fetus of one woman, and we're machal Shabbos to save the other. If you don't need to save a fetus, how could you be machal Shabbos to save one? So if the Alochas Gedolah says we're machal Shabbos to save a fetus because Chalal olav Shabbos achas kadesh yish mishabosas arba, that svara is also the source that there's a chiyuv to save a ubar, and we are machal Shabbos to save an ubar. Do we have a source in Shas that is a mitzvah to save a ubar? Yes. And that brings us to Erech and Zayin Amud Aleph, which is an amazing sugya. We find 2 halachas in that sugya. On one hand, if a woman was sentenced to capital punishment, Chayva Mises Beis Arba Mises Beis, and she's pregnant, we do not wait for her to have the baby. We administer Mises Beis immediately. Because Chazal say that's Inui Hadin. It is causing unnecessary pain and torture to a person knowing that he is going to die. Get over with it. That's Inui Hadin. So saving the fetus doesn't justify Inui Hadin. On the other hand, if a woman died, we cut open her belly. We do surgery to save the fetus. So on one hand, we learn from this sugya, yes, it's a mitzvah, it's a chiyuv to save the baby. And we do it even on Shabbos. On the other hand, doesn't justify Inui Hadin. So this is the delicate balance that Chazal struck. What we learn from this sugya l'chayra, it's not murder, it's not lo sirtzach. Inui Hadin wouldn't override lo sirtzach. But on the other hand, we do have a mitzvah. So my fundamental approach would be all these three halachas. There's a mitzvah to salvage and save a fetus. We're mechal Shabbos to save one. And there's a isar to destroy one. All these halachas are based on the same fundamental axiom, fundamental svara. Chalel olav Shabbos achas kedei sheyishmor Shabbosos harb. To my dismay, throughout the years I've done with terrible dilemmas regarding terminating pregnancies. So this sheet is not geared to halacha l'maisa and definitely not such complicated issues. But I do want to share a question I needed to deal with many times, to my terrible sorrow. When cancer is discovered in the body of a pregnant woman, there are some mild chemotherapies that we could give even when a woman is pregnant, and there's no need to terminate the pregnancy. But in many cases, we would not give chemotherapy to a pregnant woman because that might extremely compromise the health of the baby. So it goes without saying, in the medical establishment, we would not give a chemotherapy as long as she is pregnant. And many times I've been asked by young couples, what do we do? Do we terminate the pregnancy to try to save the mother even though we have no guarantee? Or would we leave it up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, let her have the baby and we'll try to treat her later? And my psak is, we terminate the pregnancy, even though we ain't confident that we could save the mother, but we try. But postponing the treatment till after the baby is born, well, if she's at the end of the ninth, we could do that. But postponing treatment for months could have very, very grave consequences, as we all know. And therefore, I always try to calm and convince the parents. Fight for her life. Fight for your life. And we terminate the pregnancy to save the mother. L'chayra, that's the Mishnah. Mechatchen es avra devorim evorim kedei latzil et ha'em. Not necessarily. And this brings us to the Rambam Perek Aleph Halacha Tes of Hilchas L'tzeach, which is a gewaltige chiddush. When the Rambam brings the Mishnah, which is also quoted in Sanhedrin Ayin Beis Amid Beis, Mu'uberes hamakasha leiled mechatchen esavra devorim evorim yotzo reisha einogam boy. Rashi writes because the uber is not a nefesh. The Rambam writes because he's a roidev. V'roidev nitan latziloi benafshoy. So if the justification to destroy the fetus is because the fetus is considered a roidev and he is the one that's threatening the mother's life, that would be relevant only if the fetus is putting the mother in danger, and that is a classical example of a mekasha leiloid. If not for the pregnancy, her life wouldn't be in danger. It is the baby endangering the mother's life. But we're dealing with a cancer, and the baby didn't give the mother cancer. So if the justification to destroy the fetus to save the mother is based on the concept of a roidev, if the mother has a tumor, the baby isn't to blame. He's not a roidev. Exactly this question was dealt with more than 250 years ago in a sefer Koyach Shor, Simen Chov Ches. Koyach Shor was the Yitzchak Shor, one of the Gedolim in the days of the Noide B'Yehuda. And at Simen Chov Ches we find a question, a tshuva. A woman had a massive hemorrhage. She was bleeding, and the doctor said, it's not caused by the pregnancy, but we cannot save her life unless we terminate the pregnancy. And the treatment necessitates destroying the fetus, destroying the baby. What would the halacha be? And the Koyach Shor quotes the Rambam. The Rambam maintains that the necessity, the permissibility, the legitimacy, the permission to destroy the fetus is only because he's a roidef. In our case, he isn't causing her bleeding, so he wouldn't be defined as a roidef, and therefore we cannot destroy the baby. Sheval Taisa Odif. And I wonder, because if we act by inaction, and the psak would be doing nothing, then the mother and baby will perish. Not always do we say Toiva Mashnahim in Echad. When it comes to Sakonas Nefoshes, we don't say Toiva Mashnayim in Echad. So will we let them both die? I know this is not a pure halachic argument, but it just doesn't make sense. And my psak is, we terminate the pregnancy, even though it is not the fetus directly putting his mother's life in danger. It's indirectly, because if we don't destroy the fetus, then we cannot treat the mother, we cannot give her chemotherapy, and we will terminate the pregnancy. What's my argument? My argument is twofold. And I know I'm going against one of the Gedolim. Tov Kuf Tes Vav, this tshuva was written. That's 166 years ago. 266 years ago. But this is my opinion. It is twofold. The Rambam is a big pella, and everybody wonders about the Rambam, from the Noise Kalam to Reb Chaim Brisker and all the others in between. The Gemara deals with this very same question of Roidev. When the Mishnah says, Yotza Roisha ein noigem boy, the Gemara asks, Lamo ein noigem boy? He's a Roidev. The baby is a Roidev. And the Gemara says, Mishomaye kerad felei. The din of Roidev ache chavere lahorgo shenitin latzila benafshe is only when there is intention to kill. Regardless of whether the Roidev is a gadol or a cotton, whether it's a bar chiyuv or not, whether it's a bar das or not. But it is only when there is intention to kill does he have it in Roidev. This baby, Yotze Roishoi, he just came out Lavira Oilam. He means no evil. He does no evil. He's not a Roidev. Mishomaya Karad Falei. The Yerushalmi has a slightly different sprach, a different formula. But I think the kavanah is the same. In Sanhedrin Mem Dalad, the Yerushalmi says, me. The baby is threatening his mother's life, the mother is threatening the baby's life, and therefore none of them has a din of roidef. Maybe they're both roidfim and both nirdofim. There is no din of roidef. So how does the Rambam say that the fetus is a roidef? If he's a roidef, we should destroy him even after Rashi just says, an uber is not a nefesh, and that is the difference, yotzeroishoy, lo yotzeroishoy. So who says we paskin according to the Rambam against Rashi? The Rambam reigns supreme. So does Rashi. I have another argument. The Rambam in Persha Mishnah Masechet Olas Perek Zayin doesn't even mefarish the Mishnah. You know what the Rambam writes? Poshatu ve'ein tzorech biur. This Mishnah is so logical, I don't even need to be mefarish. If it's based on the din roidef, of course you need to be mefarish. It goes against the Gemara. Nobody understands you. So how does the Rambam write in Persha Mishnah? Poshet ve'ein tzorech perush. So I think Rambam in Persha Mishnah coincides with Rashi and Sanhedrin, and there's a stira in the Rambam. Yes, I know. When there's a stira between Persha Mishnah and Mishnah Torah, the halacha is Mishnah Torah. But the Persha Mishnah goes together with Rashi and Sanhedrin Ayim Beis. But I want to go on. I have pshat in the Rambam, and according to my pshat, we would terminate the pregnancy to save the mother. And I dare to say my pshat, not only because I am usually strongly convinced in what I argue. Many times I say, Libi Oimeli, and when my heart talks to me, I listen carefully. I have come to trust him. But on this Chiddush, I have an explicit askama from Rabbeinu HaGodel Harav Shach Zechet Tzaddik Levroch. When I was a younger man, I had a very special relationship with Harav Shach, with Avi Ezri. Avi Ezri, the great Rosh Hashiva. I don't know why, but he liked me a lot. And I was Zoichel Akiravi Yisera. In the last Machzor in Panovich, in which Rav Shach gave Shiurim on Masechet Psochim, my sefer was on his table. And many times he looked at what I have to say. I heard this from his Bnei Bayis. And it was moved, and it means a lot to me till this very day. On 2 Simonim that I wrote, I got praise and compliments from Harav Shach. One is Bava Kama, Madura Kama Siman Mem, in the Sugya of Yush, and the other is in the Sugya of Roideif, Minchas Osha Psochim Simachov Ches, and that is what I'm going to share with you right now. The Pshat of the Minchas Osha, praised by the Avi Ezri. Shnei Dinim Beroideif. 1. When Roidef is matir, ibud nefesh. When Roidef legitimizes destroying a life, that is one din. That is the din of Roidef acha chavera lahorga nitan latzila benafsha. And in that case, we need intention to kill. But there's another din of Roidef, in which we deal not in destroying life, killing the Roidef, but rather rights, monetary rights or other rights. When the rights of Mr. Aleph contradict the rights of Mr. B, who has the upper hand, the Roidef is pushed aside for the rights of the Nirdaf. And the monetary or other rights of the threatened override the ones of the one that's threatening him, of the perpetuator. And that is a din we learn from Bava Kama Kuf Yud Zayin. Bava Kama Kuf Yud Zayin, we're dealing with a ferry, a rafsoda, ferrying goods from one side of the river to the other. People put their goods on the ferry, on the boat. One man put a mule, a donkey, on the boat. And in the middle of the river, the donkey went berserk, amok. And he starts jumping up and down, and the whole boat might capsize. We grab that animal, throw him over the boat, and let him drown. And the Gemara says, Roidef. A donkey means no bad. He doesn't have bchira. He's not a bardas. Animals don't have judgment. They don't bear responsibility for their actions and deeds. They only have instincts. Animals aren't good or bad. They don't have a yetzer tov and a yetzer hara. So how can an animal be a roidef if we need bad intentions? Because we're not dealing with lo tirtzach. We're not dealing with killing a person. We're dealing with rights. And when it comes to monetary rights, the one that is endangering the others, intentionally or unintentionally, directly or not directly. The rights of the threatened, of the nirdaf, override the rights of the roidef. So when the Gemara says in Bavli and in Yerushalmi, Yotzer Roishe ein oigen boy, ein doichen nefesh mipnei nefesh, he's not a roidef, mishumaya karad falei. That is only liyachas shiotzeroishay, because we're dealing about killing a living human being. As long as the fetus isn't born, he's not a nefesh. It's not lo yisirtzach. However, he has a right. An uber has the right. A fetus has the right to be born. He has the right to come out to this world. He has the right to grow and develop. He has the right to live. But that is a right, in a way similar to monetary rights. So when a fetus is endangering his mother's life directly or indirectly, he has the limited din of roidef. This din of roidef doesn't justify killing a baby, but it does justify terminating a pregnancy, because a fetus is not a nefesh. He has a right to live, but the rights of the mother and her life override the right of the fetus. That is what the Rambam means in roidef. If not for din number 2 in roidef, we would say the right of the mother doesn't override the right of the fetus, of the potential baby. But it does. And that is din number 2 of roidef. And according to this interpretation, when the fetus is putting his mother's life in jeopardy, directly or indirectly, that is the limited version of roidef. And the right of the mother to live overrides the right of the fetus. And that is why my psak many times was, yes, we would terminate the pregnancy when we need to treat the mother. It is not the baby that is directly putting the mother's life in jeopardy. It's indirect. But that is my understanding of the Rambam by roidef, and I was moved at the time, and I'm proud to this very day, that Avi Yezli, that Rav Shach, liked this pshat in the Rambam. So we discussed a fascinating sugya today. Troubling, fascinating. The din of Ubar, based on the story of the Miyaldos Uivrios. As I said in the opening remarks to today's Shiur, it's Chumash Shemois, Sefer HaGolus v'HaGeula. And in Parsha Shemois, the story unfolds. The revelation of Moshe Rabbeinu at the Saneh. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu appoints and anoints Moshe Rabbeinu as Moshion Shel Yisrael. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I have heard the cries and the anguish of my people, and I want to send you to bring them out of Eretz Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu was taken aback, and Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Kodesh Baruch Hu, V'yomer Moshe Elokim, Hinei Anochi bor b'nei Yisrael v'amarti lehem Elokai v'seichem, shluchani aleichem v'amru li ma shemo, ma'omer aleim. They'll ask me, who is HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What's his name? What do I say to them? V'yomer Elokim al Moshe, Ehyeh asher ehyeh. V'yomer koisoim el b'nei Yisrael, Ehyeh shluchani eleichem. And this is a shame, or an expression that we find only once in the entirety of Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, V'Ksuvim. Ehyeh asher ehyeh. What's pshat in these 3 words? We have 6 different interpretations in Meforshei HaMikra. According to some of them, we're dealing with Shemesh HaKodesh. According to some, it's not a shame. So how do I dare to say Ehyeh asher ehyeh? I should be saying Eke, like we say Hashem Elokim. Because according to some pshotim, it's not a shame. And my opinion is, if our kavana when we say these words is not the shame, then we could pronounce the words in their full version. So Moshe Rabbeinu turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, Bnei Yisrael want to know, what's your name? What's the name of Hashem? Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Eya Asher Eya. But then he says, Koi Soimer Bnei Yisrael, Eya Shluchani Alechem. Is it double or single? Rashi says, Eya imohem b'tzora zu, ve'eya imohem b'tzora acheres. Tell my beloved children, tell your brethren, I will be with them in their pain and suffering this time, and I will be with them in every galus in the future. Moshe Rabbeinu was taken aback and he says, Dailet Sora Bishato. We still didn't bring them out of Mitzrayim, and why tell them in advance that there will be so many other struggles and other galuyos? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kivayachal says, Moshe, you're right. You're right. Eya shluchani alechem. I will be with you right here and now. I will be with you in this galus. That's Rashi. Then Ramban says, when Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Kodesh Baruch Hu, what's your name? What should I tell them? Kodesh Baruch Hu responds and saying, they don't need to know my name. All they need to know is, I am with them, and I will be with them, and I feel their pain, and I hear their cries. That is all they need to know. Ehyeh asher ehyeh. I shall always be with them. That's not my name. They don't need to know my name. That's the first pshat in the Ramban. Second pshat in the Ramban is tell them, Ehyeh moem kasher hem yu imi. Mido keneged mido. B'derech shoda moeded moeded Elohim and Hashemayim. If they will put their trust in me, they will have amunah in betochen. I will salvage and save them. Ehyeh moem kasher hem yu imi. And then the Ramban quotes Reb Sadia going, Ehyeh esher ehyeh means, I am forever. I am for eternity. Ani rishon v'ani achorin, umebarodai ein Elohim. That is Ehyeh asher ehyeh. The Rambam quotes the Moreh Nevuchim, and this is a profound pshat. There is only one being that is because he is. He is because he is. He is because he must be. He is because it's inconceivable and it's impossible he should not be. All the other beings are here for a reason. All the other beings exist because someone made them exist. Someone created them. The Rambam in the very first halacha in Mishnah Torah. Yesoid Torah Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph, the Rambam writes, Yesoidus v'amud ha'chochmas leidish yesha motzi rishon. Mamtzi kol nimtzo. וכל הנמצואים בשמיים ובארץ ומה שביניהם אינם נמצאים אלא מאמיתת הימצאו. What an unbelievable definition. What words. Only the Rambam could write a sentence like that. Ehyeh asher ehyeh means, according to the Rambam, I am because I am. I exist because I exist. I exist because I must exist. I exist because it's inconceivable that I should not exist. And therefore, they should put their trust in me. That's number 5. Number 6 is the Rashbam. The Rashbam is amazing and profound. And the Rashbam writes, this is a secret shein megalan ela litznuim, and therefore he uses a code, the code of Atbash. Check the Rashbam on this posuk in Chumash Shemos. It's amazing. So Atbash is no longer a secret. I remember many, many years ago, decades ago, I just took a pen and I figured it out. So what the Rashbam says, Hu oimer ehyeh, v'anachnu oimrim yihiyeh. So ehyeh is Shem Havaya. It's the same Shem. So you all speak Lashon HaKodesh. So when a person points at an other, he says, Hu yihiyeh Sham. Hu yihiyeh Gadol. But a person says the same about himself. He says, Ani ehyeh Sham. Ani ehyeh Gadol. Shem Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, in Pnimius is Yud Kei, Yud Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei is Olam Habo and Olam Hazeh. Ultimately, it will be Yud Kei. That's known from the Ari. Yehiyeh and Ehiyeh are the same word. It is Yehiyeh when we point at another, and it is Ehiyeh when a person speaks about himself. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name is Yehiyeh. That is Yud Kei Vav Kei. But it is only because we refer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it is only once in the entire Tanakh that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was asked, what is your name? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks about himself, Kaviyochel, and he says, what is my name? My name is Eheyeh. You call me Yehiyeh, but I call myself Eheyeh, and it's the same. That's an amazing thought. So Eheyeh is Shem Havaya. So what is the message HaKadosh Baruch Hu conveys to Yiddish Kendalach in their times of suffering, in their times of trial and pain, in Golos Mitzrayim? It is Shem Havaya. Shem Havaya is Midas Rachamim, ultimate Rachamim, abundant mercy. Shem Havaya is Yehiyeh. Many times I said, Jews never lived in the present. The present usually was too sad and too painful. We look back at our past to derive strength and emunah while our eyes are fixed on the horizon. We derive strength from our past, looking forward to the future. The present was always painful. The future is unbelievably bright. We believe that this word is only a prosdor, it's a passage. The traklin is to come, the Ketz Yamin, at the end of days, at the end of each one of his life, his own personal life, and at the end of days of Klal Yisrael. So our eyes are always fixed on the horizon, waiting for sunrise, for Shachar Shel Moshiach. This world resembles the night. Lahagid baboiker chazdecho ve'emunascho balaylos. Nafshi Hashem is shoymrim laboiker. We go through life hoping to see sunrise. Our eyes are fixed to the east, waiting for the zricha. So Moshe Rabbeinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they will want to know, what's your name? What's your promise? What should I tell them? Eheyeh, Shem Havaya, ultimate Rachamim and Chasodim. Eheyeh, look to the future. I will be, so will you. And we will live to see sunrise and Shachar Shel Moshiach. So whatever I said about Eya Asher Eya is emes, la'amito, it's pshat, it's pnimius. But I also want to share with you a word in Drash. Vayomer oid Elokim al Moshe koisoimer el bnei Yisrael Hashem Elokai v'sechem Elokai Avrom Elokai Yitzchak v'Elokai Yaakov shlochani aleichem zeh shmi liyolim v'zeh zichri ledoyer doyer. In this posuk, Elokai Avrom Elokai Yitzchak v'Elokai Yaakov, HaKadosh Baruch Hu miyachet shemo in each of the others by himself. And then the posuk goes on, Lech v'osaftu zikni Yisrael. ואמרתי עליהם השם אלוקי ושכם נראו אליי, אלוקי אברהם יצחק ויעקב, together, אלוקי אברהם יצחק ויעקב, לאמור, פוקד פקדתי אסכם ושעשוי לכם במצרים. Why in the first posuk it's אלוקי אברהם, אלוקי יצחק, and then אלוקי יעקב, and the second posuk it is אלוקי אברהם יצחק ויעקב together. I say, there's an amazing story in Bava Metzia, Pei Hei Amud Beis. Eliyahu Novi used to come to Rebbe's yeshiva every day to learn and to hear Torah from Rebbe, from Rabbeinu HaKodesh. One day he didn't show up. He comes the other day, he comes tomorrow. Rebbe asks him, where were you yesterday? And he says, I couldn't make it, I didn't have time, I was in the heavens. And Rebbe asks, why were you so busy? And Eliyahu shares a secret with Rebbe. I have a tafkid, I have a mission, I have a job. Every morning I wake up Avraham Avinu, I wash his hands, and he davens, and then I put him back to sleep. And I do the same with Yitzchak. I wake him up, I wash his hands, he davens, and he goes back to bed. And then Yankov. Yesterday was Rosh Chodesh, a lange davening. Hallel, Musaf, Kriyas HaTorah. So this ceremony took up most of my day. I couldn't get to the yeshiva. Rebbe is persistent. You know, Rosh Yeshiva Tere wouldn't dare to ask a bucher, why didn't you come yesterday? The bucher would be offended. Rebbe wasn't that type of Rosh Yeshiva. Elior probably was as choshev to Talmud, but the Rebbe asked him, why didn't you come yesterday to yeshiva? Elior has a good excuse, but then Rebbe asked him, so why do you need to wake up Avram and then put him back to bed, and then Yitzchak, then Yaakov? Can't you wake them all three up together and wash their hands, let them daven together? Maybe you would have made it to say the Sheni. And then Eliyahu reveals a shocking secret, and he says, when the others will daven together, Mashiach will come. Nothing could stand against the shared tefillah of the Ovis HaKdoshim. And it's not time yet. So I don't have rishus, I don't have permission. Because when the others will daven together, that is when Mashiach will come. For the time being, they could only daven separately. So the first posuk deals with the Geula Shlema. La'osad lavoi, zeh shmi li'olim v'zeh zichri le'doyer doyer. And that is why the posuk says, Hashem Elokei v'sechem shluchani alechem, Elokei Avram lachud, Elokei Yitzchak lachud, Elokei Yankov lachud, not together. Second posuk deals with Geulas Mitzrayim. Pokoit pokadati eschem v'sa'asui lachem b'Mitzrayim. Regarding Mitzrayim, Geulas Mitzrayim, they daven together. And therefore, this Geula is munach b'kufsa. This Geula is guaranteed. Lech v'osafnu azikli Yisrael v'omartu aleihem. Hashem Elokei avoisechem niru elai. Elokei Avram, Yitzchak v'Yankov together. Lemor. Poket b'kadet yeschem v'sasui lechem b'Mitzrayim. My dear friends, I don't know to which yeshiva Eliyahu Novi comes today. I don't think I ever saw him in my koil. But I believe he comes to some yeshiva. I don't know where. But let us all hope and daven that in another week and a half, he should come to the yeshiva Rosh Chodesh as well. He should have permission to take all the of us together, and they should daven together, and then we will be Zoicha. Zeh shmi li'olam v'zeh zichri le'doyer doyer. We will be Zoicha. Ki ameitzeschem me'eretz Mitzrayim arenu neflois. Ki ayin ba'ayin yiru b'shuv Hashem Tzion v'niglo kvoid Hashem v'ro kol bosi yachtav ki pi Hashem diber bebias Moshiach tzidkeinu b'mheiro v'yomeinu. Amen.